Hey, hey, welcome to the Summit Host Hangout podcast where you'll learn how to plan, strategize, and launch your profitable online summit. No influencer status necessary. I'm your host, Krista from Summit in a Box, and today in episode 105, I have one of my very favorite people on the podcast to talk about something that ends up being harder than it should be, and that is naming your virtual summit. And I've gotten a sneak peek at the do's and don'ts that this guest is going to go over, and I'll tell you firsthand, I wish I would have known all of this before I named my first summit, because there was some drama that went on in there that I'm sure we will get to in this episode. But to give you some background information on our guest, he's a lawyer, speaker, and business coach for entrepreneurs. With his law firm and courses, he helps online business owners call legal dibs on their brand name and signature methods so they never have to worry about losing their brand overnight. He's helped thousands of entrepreneurs and has spoken all over the country to help business owners stay safe, thriving, and he is one of the very few people I know who can make the legal parts of running a business fun, or at least entertaining in the process. So without further ado, let's dive in and talk with Joey Vitale. Welcome, Joey. I'm so excited to have you.
Hi, Krista. Man, episode 105.
Heck yeah.
What a milestone. Excited to be here.
Yes, and I'm so glad to finally have you on. It took us long enough. Like I said before we started recording, I feel like you should have been on here a while ago. But...
You guys, I joke that I just want Krista and I to become best friends. I've been working on this for a while, so it's a real honor to be here.
No, this is going to be great. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited to talk about this with you. Before we dive in to the naming stuff, tell us a little bit more about you and your business.
Sure. So again, my name is Joey C. Vitale. The C is short for Caesar. Fun fact.
I didn't know that.
We'll just kick this off with...
I did not know that.
with fun facts related to like salads. So like Caesar salad, Joseph Caesar Vitale. I am a lawyer and I specialize in trademarks. I do that for two reasons. One is because trademarks are super important for business owners. And as somebody who started a law firm, I realized this just kind of with my boots on the ground, talking with business owners all the time, seeing so many nightmare situations. Other reason why I specialize in trademarks though, is because I don't like to argue. I'm not the kind of attorney that you want representing you in a courtroom. I'm not a fighter. And so this is a really good practice area for me to help my clients proactively so they never have to be in any type of a court proceeding, cease and desist situation because they're calling dibs on their trademarks proactively.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And I love that you point that out. Like you're not a fighter. I remember when I like started learning more about you, like I knew you were an attorney. Like that's like the first thing I knew about you. But when I started seeing how fun you were, I was like, wait, how? So like it really makes sense when you put it that way. Like not going to see Joey in a courtroom, like fighting back and forth.
Nope. I tried it. At some point, a partner at my law firm pulled me aside and said, Joey, if you're going to stay with this law firm, you should probably change your name from Joey to Joe. Like people need to take you seriously. And that was one of many red flags when I was like, okay, maybe not for me.
That's intense.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, cool. Well, tell us a little bit about why you see naming as something that's so important. And if you have like an example or two of mistakes you've seen, that would be cool too.
Yeah. So whether you love it or hate it, the naming process, it like takes time and it is a process. Like before I started my own business and I don't have any kids, I remember naming our dog. And my wife and I, for the longest time, couldn't come up with the name that we both liked. So we just picked a character from our favorite TV show, and that was it. And there are so many different schools of thought when it comes to naming. Like, should it be super descriptive? Should it be more cute and clever? What's the difference between a good name and a bad name? The problem is so many people think you name it, which, like I said, is a big process in and of itself. And you have to make sure the domain name's available and the social media handles are there. Once you get it, then people start saying, well, when do we want to trademark this thing? The problem with that is that if you wait to trademark until after you've committed to the name, you're on super thin ice that the name that you picked is accidentally infringing on somebody else.
I did that. Did you know I did that?
Yeah, we talked about it.
I'm trying to remember if I told you. Okay, so you guys... So for my very first summit ever, I had what I thought was the best name. It was a good name. It was catchy. The first summit went off so well. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to trademark this. Because there were people in my group like making their own worksheets for it and using my brand name. I was like, oh, no, I need to protect this because someone else is going to want it. And I went to an attorney and I was like, I want to trademark this. And she was like, you should probably just stop using that name because it's trademarked by, is it okay for me to tell me if is this legal advice, Joey? Can I say it? She's like, yeah, Emily Ley has the word simplified trademarked. It's like, oh, I've heard of her a time or two. I'm guessing most people who are listening know of Emily Ley. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I won't trademark. And I went on with my life. And then a couple months later, I get a cease and desist from Emily Ley. So you guys, do not wait until you have used your perfect summit name to go into the trademark process, because, oh my goodness, it was such a pain then. One, it was embarrassing as heck. Like, oh, like, come on, I could have caught this so much earlier. And it was such a pain. And if I would have followed the process I know you're going to walk us through, it would have just saved so many headaches.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of the process I'm going to walk you guys through, I've got a secret approach to this that I've learned and perfected over the years that I'm super excited to share with you. And this same secret applies to your business name, your course, podcast, but I'm really excited that we can talk about it specifically when it comes to your summit because it applies there too.
Oh, for sure. Okay, so you have this 3-part process with all these awesome secrets. Let's just dive in and tell us what the first one is.
So the secret itself is called my RAD method, R-A-D. And the first part to it, the R, stands for ready. And this is where it's really important to just get clear on what it means to get something trademarked or, to file some type of trademark paperwork. One of my favorite things to do back in the day when we had in-person conferences was to get up on stage in front of a bunch of business owners, start out by saying, hey, quick show of hands. How many of you guys have trademarks? And out of the hundreds or thousands of people in the room, just like a handful of hands would go up. And I'd be like, well, that was a trick question. All of you guys probably have trademarks. And they're like, wait, what does that mean, huh? And I'm like, there are actually 2 different levels of trademarks. And so the first level is automatic, it's free. And that's what a lot of you guys probably have just by being in business. The reason why you go to an attorney, the thing that you're probably thinking about when you think of trademarks is a trademark registration. That's something that you can apply for at the federal level that allows you to claim the rights that you already have. I like to think about it as thinking of your business as a house that you build. So when you build the business, you have the business name, you have the summit. That's the house. It exists, but it's not very well protected. It doesn't have a fence around it. So building the house gives you trademark rights. They're technically called common law trademark rights. That means that you only have exclusive rights in your geographic region. So bigger than a city, much smaller than a state, which is helpful if you're like a corner bakery, but not very helpful if you're an online business owner. And so if you want to make sure that you have exclusive rights nationwide to your summit, then you need that fence. And that's where the trademark registration comes in place.
Okay. See, I didn't know any of this. This is really cool.
Well, and when you Google trademarks, this doesn't pop up.
Right.
So I like to start off here in the ready stage before we get into the nitty gritty stuff, because as a trademark lawyer, I know it's like a freaking iceberg of laws when it comes to trademarks. And when you try and Google this stuff, you get conflicting information. Like, guys, I went to law school, so you don't have to. And the truth is, you don't have to know the entire iceberg to move forward in your business with trademarks. You just have to understand the part of it that's above the surface. And so one of those things is understanding these 2 different layers of trademark rights. Another is understanding that not all summit names are trademarkable.
So like what's not trademarkable?
So, and I want to be clear here, because just because something isn't trademarkable doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. You just have to know what you're getting yourself into. So there's this really fun wrinkle in trademark law called the spectrum of distinctiveness.
Super fun.
I love spectrums. So on the one end of the spectrum, you've got super weak trademarks / trademarks that can't be trademarks. So for example, if I started a coffee shop and I called it the coffee shop, I could do that. I could name my coffee shop the coffee shop, but I can't exclude others from using that name, right? Like that just makes sense at a common sense level. Yeah. But you see business owners doing this all the time. If you pick a name that is super generic or descriptive, you can do that. It just comes at the cost of not excluding others to do it as well. And so it's okay to come up with a summit name that is more generic, more descriptive, that is really on the nose for what the summit's about. But what that means is if one of your speakers or attendees decides to create another summit with the same name, you can't call dibs on that. And you just have to understand that when you make that kind of a name. If you shift over to the other end of the spectrum, this is where you have super strong trademarks. And just because they're strong doesn't mean that you want them. So what I mean here is strong trademarks are very abstract or fanciful, meaning when you see them, you really can't connect the dots unless you have awareness of the reputation of this business to what it is that they do. So like Kodak, totally made up word. Kajabi, I think is a totally made up word. Dipsado, all of these names that don't really mean anything, but they do because the business built a reputation around it. We see those more commonly in startups and apps. We don't see that as much in the online business space. Again, you can do it, but then you're kind of fighting an uphill battle of trying to get your people to understand what it's about. Mm-hmm. Nonetheless, like how to say it correctly.
In Dipsado's case.
Right. In the middle is where we have the sweet spot. This is suggestive trademarks. And I think this can do really well for summits, business names, and podcasts. Because when you go in the middle of the spectrum, you can benefit from having trademark rights and being suggestive of what it is that you do. My favorite example of this is Jaguar. So if I were to say that I have a company called Jaguar, you might not have any idea of what it is that I do. But as soon as I say it's a car company, you already can understand brand-wise how it's going to feel. Like it's fast, it's high-end, it's luxury. And so it takes some creative thinking here about how can you come up with a name for your summit that takes a stand or shows what it is that you stand for. Really more of like a Rocky Road name than like a vanilla name.
That's really cool, though. I was trying to think of when you were talking about what was the other end of the spectrum? Did you give it a name when it was like
generic?
Really, maybe the opposite, really specific.
So there's generic and descriptive on one end, and then there's arbitrary and fanciful on the other.
Okay. So the first one, I was trying to think of like an example of a summit name. Would it be like the Wedding Summit or something like that?
So, and this is, I have to be clear here because we see this all the time. Yeah. We have the Wedding Planning Summit. I don't think that actually exists. I don't want to throw anybody under the table, right. But there's like the Instagram, whatever, or the whatever. Like if you're just talking about who your audience is in the name of the summit, then again, that is okay, but you can't call dibs on that name. And as your business grows, that's going to be worse and worse. I like to think about it as, again, I haven't been to the grocery store in forever, but when you go to the grocery store and you go down a cereal aisle, you see at the bottom shelf those like fruit O's.
Yeah.
And like if that's how you're naming your summit, then over time, people might start to look to that summit as a commodity of what it does instead of having more of a set of values and really making a statement with what it's about and how it's different than another summit that's on a similar topic.
That totally makes sense. Okay, awesome. Was that part of the R or was that the A?
That we're still in R. We're still in the ready phase.
Wow. Okay. This is an awesome phase. Is there anything else before we move on to A?
That's enough for now.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, awesome. I love that. R is ready. What do we have for A?
A is aim. So it's kind of like ready, aim, fire, but there's a surprise at the end. So when it comes to aim, now that we know the difference between an automatic common law trademark right and this registration, we're thinking, okay, how can we get that trademark registration? And I love that I called this aim because it really is almost like you're looking at a target with the trademark registration as the bullseye. And it's important to take some aim here and figure out what you can do to really try and hit the bullseye. Because if you just take the shot willy-nilly, you're probably not going to get it, or you're going to get it, but it's not going to protect you the way that you think it should. Most trademark applications fail. And there are over 500,000 trademark applications that get filed every year.
Dang.
And unlike with Facebook ads, when you put an ad up and they reject it, but they reject it in like a day after you put it up, the trademark office waits 3, 4, 6 months before they tell you that they're going to reject it. And so you really want to be careful to do what you can proactively here so that you're confident you're going to get to the bullseye. And there are 2 parts of the aiming process that you want to get right. One is the search. The other is the application. A lot of people want to skip the search. You can't skip the search because the biggest reason why trademark applications get denied is because there was already a trademark that was too similar. And it doesn't have to be the exact same. It just has to be similar to a similar audience. And so you can Google, you can go to uspto.gov, which is the US Trademark Office's website. There's a free database there. Running a search on that site and reviewing the responses and the results that you get is tricky. Out of everything that I'm talking about, that's probably the biggest place where you'd probably want to get a lawyer involved, or at least have a lawyer guide you through the process. And then we get to the application. The application is deceptively simple. Like a lot of online application forms, it's like question with a text field or question with something that you attach. But unlike a lot of, newer forms that are out there that will like turn red or give you an exclamation point if something's not right, the trademark office is not checking your work. This is a big problem when people try and use LegalZoom. It can turn into a really big garbage in, garbage out situation where if you don't know how to answer these questions, no one's going to tell you, not LegalZoom, unless someone is actually analyzing what you're saying. And there's a lot of stuff to think about. There's what exactly is it that I want as my summit name? Is it the words only? Is it the logo? Do I have a slogan I want to attach to it? We have to pick one of 45 different classes that best fits what your summit is about. You have to describe what it is in a way that's accurate, but in a way that the trademark office will understand. And you have to attach evidence of you using the name of your summit in a way that's considered trademark use.
That sounds tricky.
And so you want to make sure you get the application right.
So what was I trying to trademark? I don't remember what I was trying to trademark. I did start I was trying to trademark Summit in a Box. And I did start going through the whole LegalZoom process and filling out this form. And when you said deceptively simple, I was like, yes, that is perfect. Because I'm filling out this form and I'm like, oh, okay, some of the pieces I'm like, oh, this isn't so bad. And then others I'm like, I have no idea what they want from me here, And I never hit submit on that form, luckily. It would not have gone well. The process I've gone through when working with an attorney has been interesting. Not Joey, you guys. I didn't know Joey before I started this process, and I'm so mad. But oh my gosh, I would have never successfully done that through LegalZoom. You said that you have to show your trademark in use or whatever. What would that look for if you're trying to trademark something like a summit that hasn't been run yet?
So good question. For a lot of business owners now, this evidence that we have to attach, it's called a specimen. For a lot of us, it's a website screenshot. Now, the trademark office is getting a lot of spam. And so they're making some new requirements that they want to see. A difficult one is now, and if you attach a screenshot, the screenshot has to show the time and date and URL of the page. And you can't Photoshop it in. It's like, what does that mean? Whatever. We figured out a way to do it. But if you just take just the screenshot of where you're at, it might not be enough. The other thing to think about, and this is where things get tricky, if you're not yet using it as a trademark, which means having it used in commerce, meaning if your summit hasn't launched yet, if you haven't started promoting it yet, then you might not be able to file an in-use trademark application. But you can file an intent to use trademark application. That can be really helpful if you haven't launched anything yet. If you're still in the naming phase, but you want to do this the right way and make sure you have rights to it before you commit to it, that intent to use application, a little bit more advanced, but it's actually an easier application because you don't have to show the evidence up front.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So we aimed at our trademark, our successful trademark.
Yep.
What do we have for the D?
The D is done.
Woo!
So here's why I love this approach. When we get to the D part, all of the hard work is done. You've already thought about the search and looked into that. You've already, before you really dug into the application part, you've thought about what you're going to say, what class to pick, everything. And so it becomes a lot more effortless to go through the process. I like to say that it's like riding the wave of the work that you've already done. But I also can't stress that the D is the most important part, you guys. I can't tell you how many business owners I've worked with. They've put trademark on their to-do list and they think about it. Maybe they run a search, whatever, but they never get around to actually submitting their application. Maybe they even think, oh, I ran a search. No one has anything similar, so I'm just good. And then months later, years later, sometimes weeks later, they check the trademark database again and someone filed for something before they got around to it. And so it really is important to submit that application as quickly as you can, because until you get that trademark registration in place, you're walking a thin line that you might not actually own it. And you guys, true story, like I do walk my talk. So indie law is a registered trademark. That has an interesting journey of its own. We've been trying to secure that for over 2 years now, and we got it. But it's you guys know everybody and their grandma is trying to start a business right now, and there are only so many different names that we can come up with. And so if you think of a name pretty easily that you like, chances are that other people probably thought of that same name as well as like a low-hanging fruit option. And so it's important to get this stuff in place. And this can really have consequences. I've had clients who they were just about ready to start their vacation. Like we're talking the plane goes off, lands, when they get their phone out of airplane mode, they see a cease and desist letter in their inbox. I've had clients whose Facebook ads went to a competitor with a name as they were in the middle of a launch. And they had to not only cancel the launch, but rebrand everything because a competitor saw it and sent this cease and desist letter. Again, one of the biggest mistakes that we can be making is thinking, I'll name my summit first and I'll trademark it later. Because the truth is that until you secure it as a trademark, the naming process isn't done. And I think that in itself is something that is still so new to a lot of business owners. The other day, I said in a Facebook group, like, hey, I'm going to be talking about this topic. Would you guys rather have me talk about naming tips or trademark tips? And so many people in the comments were like, I've already got a great name. I would love some trademark help. And I'm like, oof, we're going to be ripping off some Band-Aids here. So I think that insight alone is really helpful to all of this. But again, if you just think ready, aim, done, and then the secrets that we talked about within there, that'll really help you shortcut your way to calling dibs on your brand in a legal way.
Yeah, like just the motivation that gives to actually do the thing instead of, like you said, putting it on the to-do list and just thinking about it over and over and coming up with every reason to just do it later. I just feel like just that name right there that you gave just gives a little push, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And, you know, when we have clients who, despite our best efforts, they don't get the trademark in, it's a really unfortunate situation, and our heart goes out to them. My team really supports them, but we will not tolerate them blaming us because they didn't get the name that they wanted. Mm-hmm. You know, it's you as a business owner have a responsibility to pick names that we can help you protect. And it would be super smart of you to not get too emotionally attached to a name until you secure it with the trademark office.
That right there is a pro tip. Because it is so easy to pick that perfect name and instantly just be married to it. Like I was with my first summit name. And then all of a sudden you can't use it anymore. But Joey, I see another service you guys can add to your lineup. It's like Name My Summit. And you guys name our summits for us. See?
Yeah, I love naming strategy with people.
Do you?
Yeah, one of the things that I like to do that's a little bit different than people are used to is instead of coming up with a name and then seeing if it's available, I love coming up with like 100 good names at first.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So many people think like, oh, I can only think of like 1 or 2 good names. And if I don't get either of them, like my life is ruined. And all the 2-word domain names are taken and all this stuff. And it's like, no, when you really get creative, and that's why I love suggestive trademarks. When you really start thinking about, okay, how do I want this summit to really stand out? It's limitless. That said, let's think about trademarks. So I told Krista before we recorded this that I've got an idea for a new program that I'm doing. And you guys, I fall short of this sometimes too. Like there's a name that I came up with and I'm like, ooh, I want it. And so we're filing an intent to use trademark on it before we launch the course. And It's really nice once you do this once to just rinse and repeat next time you have name ideas. Because you're always going to have something new to name in your business.
Yep, that's how it works, isn't it? We can't just stop.
Well, because it's not just a summit or a business name. You know, there's podcasts, there's courses, there's different signature methods that you want to use or signature talks that you want to give. There's so many different brand elements that we as course creators and thought leaders have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you for breaking all of this down for us today. So much good stuff to think on. And I hope this is like kicking some people into action to get on it with the trademark thing. Is there like one big takeaway you would want everyone to get from what you talked about?
Yeah. If you want to make your mark, first you have to claim your mark.
That's catchy.
Yeah. That's my little Yoda-ism. But here's a more practical one. We talked about the different levels of trademark rights. Just by having that house, just by using those common law trademark rights that you can rely on, that gives you the ability to use that little TM symbol. A lot of business owners don't realize that even without a registration, for free, without doing anything, you can slap that little TM on whatever you want. And that's better than nothing. So if you want to put some deterrent vibes out there as you launch, feel free to look legit and add the TM there, but realize that your work isn't done until you get the registration in place.
Mm-hmm. And that's when it changes to the little R symbol.
Yep.
Yeah. See, I learned this from your Instagram account last month or so, and my mind was just, I like read that caption literally 3 or 4 times. It's like, is that really what he's saying? What?
Isn't that crazy?
It is really crazy. I know there's some blown minds right now listening to this. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for all of this, Joey, and breaking this down and making it easy to understand and also entertaining, which is just the way you do things. So thank you. I really appreciate it. Where can people go to learn more about you and what you offer and how they can get your help with trademarks if they're like, please save me?
So if you want to start a one-to-one conversation, feel free to just DM me on Instagram at Joey C. Vitale. And if you want to go a little bit deeper into my RAD strategy, I talk about it more in a free training that I do that you can find at joeycvitale.com/training.
And it's a good one, you guys. Definitely go check that out. Seriously, everything Joey puts out there is so good. So if you want help with all this trademark stuff, go get in touch with Joey. He's really the best. I wouldn't have had him on if he wasn't the best.
Thanks.
So
Krista.
Thank you so much, Joey, for being here. This was great.
Thanks so much for having me. What a freaking pleasure. And you guys, don't edit this out. If you guys have enjoyed this episode or any episode and you haven't left a review yet for Krista, please go ahead and do it. It's not that hard to do. It really means the world. I know as somebody who now has a podcast, I had never done one before. And now I know how much it really means to the host of the podcast when those come in. So make Krista's day and just write a couple of sentences.
Tell us you did it because of Joey, too.
Okay,
thank
fair
you,
enough.
Joey.
Fair
I
enough.
literally never asked them to do that. So thank you so much. It really does mean a lot. And you're the best. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today. For show notes and resources we mentioned and links to all of Joey's stuff, head to summithosthangout.com/105. In the next episode, we'll be chatting about the most important contracts that should be involved in a virtual summit. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Now go out and take action to plan, strategize, and launch your profitable online summit. Yay!